That went somewhere. Good morning. I hate mornings, especially when building a Tamiya gearbox. So we're up to parts 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. That's for this one. Basically building the gearbox and getting it installed. Now I do have a video where I'm building a gearbox from a few years back. Might be on my Grandola or another Scania. But basically all the gearboxes are the same. I'm actually wasting my time doing this in a way because I've got one of these for my daughter, which is a single speed planetary gearbox from Lesu, and I also have one of these in my Mack, and I've got one of these for my custom Kenworth Grandola that I'm building there, and these are just so much better, but will be so much more suited for my daughter being her first truck. However, it's technically not a waste because I am on with putting together another truck, or should I say all the parts. I just have a couple of little bits and bobs to sort for that build. I ain't going to disclose or let anyone know. Dave knows, so keep quiet. And Chris, you know what this build is, so hush. And that would be suited for a 3-speed gearbox. Yes, I want power in a truck. But I'll leave you wondering on that one. Well, that'll be fun because the tri-drive's pretty much at paint stage. This is still prep work, and I'm forever changing my mind with this one. So there's still quite a bit to do there yet. And my Volvo, I'm picking up the clear coat for that later. They had none when I went the other week, and I haven't been back since. So I want to get that Volvo finished. But for now, this dreaded gearbox for this new Tamiya Scania. So in this we're doing the shift rod, shift forks, and these are what switch between the gears, and this is operated by the servo. So I won't be using this in this truck, but I will put it together to hopefully help some of you along if you are new to this. If it's your first gearbox, then it might seem daunting. They're not as bad. My problem is just there's so many E-clips and I hate them. All the shift forks are the same. There is no middle, left or right or whatnot. However, I do believe one will go in the opposite way to another one of them. It's kind of like that way, if you will. So they don't all go in the same way, but they are all the same. So the first one we want on is the first shift fork here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put a spring on there, followed by a washer. And then you want to take one of the tiny E-clips, those little pins in the arses, and this is going to go on the second little like recess that's been cut there. So I hate these, but the little ones, they aren't as bad. There we go, and that's all going to bunch up there. And then what we're going to do is lock that in there with another E-clip. Got a space here, so now we're going to add another E-clip to this one, shift fork, Now you'll have a little parts tree that looks like this, and you want to be taking J1, and we just want to put this between there, and then the other shift fork is going on there like so, and then again at this side you want another spring and a washer, and then another one of these little E-clips just to hold all this in place. Now what we want to do is take this gearbox plate where the motor bolts up to, you know that because it has the additional hole in the top, and we're going to attach those, and also this J part, J2. So now taking the motor plate and your J2 part there, just going to drop one of the tiny nuts to that little nut recess, and a little 2x6 screw in there. Same on this side. I want to take a rod, now you want to take this little rod and a flange nut and just line that up until it will screw on no more, and that's going to come through this hole here, and the other flange nut on the back. So that is section 18. So now on to section 19. We have more E-clips and some gears. Well, remember to always compare parts if you're unsure on the manual. It's a perfect guideline. You don't want to get these the wrong way around. But all you do is just line up which gear shaft you're using. So we'll be using that one. So first thing, we may as well get these E-clips out of the way, or ones that we can get out of the way to start with. So I'm just going to pop this one onto here. So be careful on what gears you are using, just always be wary and compare them against the thing in the manual, the little guideline. So here we've got the 13 tooth gear, which is going to slot over there like so, and then over the top of that one we're going to be putting this one. Now remember and make sure everything goes the right way around. With this you can't get it wrong, there is only one way, but just always be on the lookout because these gearboxes can be sneaky. And then we want another E-clip on the end to lock that in. And we're going to be using this one, which is 20 tooth. Now basically it's how many teeth is on the gear. If you were to mark it and then count round like a clock, there will be 20 teeth on there. There is no right or wrong way for that one, so we'll slot that on there. And another E-clip, and just before this one, because this is another blank, so we want another E-clip and a consonant. And another E-clip please. So there we have those, and then you want your 27 tooth gear, short gear hub, drop that in there, and then that on there, that way around, and add another E-clip. Now moving on to part 20, which is the other shaft that we're working with now, and the remaining gears. So you have a variant size bushing here, and if you're swapping out to bearings, you must use the bushings in this specific bit because you are gluing them in there, and it's advised not to replace with ball bearings. So we are going to grease up the shaft in where this is going to sit, and I'm just going to do it as the manual states. So I'm just going to run a bit of cement around the outside of the bearing, and just going to drop that one in there also, like so. Now taking the gear shaft, and I'm just going to put this E-clip in the centre one there, and also we need a little bit of grease on here, and slot that onto there like so, and then put another E-clip in here. Now for this one, it doesn't say to glue the bearings in, and it doesn't mention about replacing the bushings with bearings and not to do that, etc. So I'm going to use the correct sized bearings for this bit and not glue them in. Now this, I'm going to slot up to that one like so, and this is what engages and disengages a gear. I do have a video of the internals of a gearbox working on my channel. Another E-clip, and then using one of the longer gear hubs, another E-clip, and now for this side, huge washer, another long gear, and then you want J8. Be sure to clean all these parts up. That's going to sit on there. And taking the larger gear, you want to add the regular size bearings, and that's going to go up against this one. And your shift fork is going to operate these. Then you want the little J5 washer space thing. That's just going to sit up on the end there. And another E-clip. And again, just taking another couple of bearings, regular size these. Drop that into there, into the back. And this, like we've done down here, it's going to slot onto there like so, and then going this way around, and the final E-clip on that shaft, and there is pretty much the gearbox. Well, we've got the shafts and the forks and all the gears on there, so we're winning. So I want to take this we'd made up earlier, and we are just going to add a bearing again, a little bit of grease on there, and that's going to pop into there, and then taking one of the gear shafts we've made up with the larger gear, and that's going to seat into this bearing. So we're going to want to add a little bit of grease onto there. It's a rotating part. And that should just pop into there, like so. And there's some of these on the J parts, and one's just going to sit into there. Again, we're going to pop another bearing in there, and then that one is going to take this gear shaft. So a bit of grease again on the end, Now the shift fork, so to grease this bit. And this part's going to go through the brass bushing here on the plate. And the forks are going to seat with on the train wheel looking gears. So I'll just remove that part, lined up the shift forks. Now I want to add the spring onto there, and then I'll just enclose them back in as a hole. And there we go, one shift fork. Now just taking the other side of the motor plate, I just want to pop them J parts in there, add bearings, then you'll have another spring, add that to the other side of the shift fork, and then grease up the end of the gear shafts here. You can grease this part of the shaft here where it's going to sit in the bearing, but not the flat spot. I mean, it'll wipe off if you do. I'm just going to line them up into the bearings. Shift fork into the brass hole, and there we go. And then taking the screws, I'm going to just screw all this back up. Thread lock. Take your remaining rod. Just before we do bolt this back up, I almost forgot, I just noticed it there. And this is just going to sit under the shift rod basically. And now we can clamp it all back up. So just remember your thread lock on all of the screws. Now your gearbox would be looking something like that. And there you can see. And then it would engage to the centre. And to the outside. So I do have a video showing a demonstration of a gearbox. I can always do another one with this when I take it back out of the truck and show you the internals, how they all work. But for now, I'm going to add some grease, and again I'm just going to be using this red tacky for the gearbox. So now that's all running free, just before we start putting the motor in and putting it together, do just need to add 2 more E-clips to those shift rod there, one on either side. I'm not going to be bothering with the shifting gadget that bolts on this little piece and stuff, because I'm going to be using this on another project, and you'll have the remaining J part there. And this is going to go in there just to clamp all that in nice and stop it waggling around, basically a bushing. And then, as we've done on the axles, I'm going to take your little cup and over the flat spot with the longer grub screws that you'll be used to using. There is going to be a smaller one going in the motor pinion. So I want some thread lock. Now taking the motor, your piece of cardboard is actually a motor plate. It's supposed to be like a heat sink. Just line the holes up on that. So from the back here, you want your screw, thread lock it, obviously, as I'm just using this as a demo, won't be being thread locked. So you don't want to fully clamp this in yet, because you do need to make way so you can set your pinion. I like it in the centre of the gear. So now taking the smaller grub screw, a little bit of thread lock. You don't want it too tight where you can end up just chewing your gear. You do want to be able to get like a thin piece of paper between them, like literally leave the slightest little gap, so they're not completely touching. I don't know if that's going to focus in there, but as the manual shows as well, that there is like an ever so slight gap between the pinion and your spur gear. So now I'm comfortable with where that's set, can now tighten that up. And a bit of grease again. Once you're comfortable with your gearbox and it's all running smooth, all the gears covered in grease, we can now put this together. Now this going the same way as the axle casings go together. You have the hex marked out in there where you're going to drop the nuts and just screw it in from the back. So taking your gearbox, and seating that in there like so, drop a nut in the back, 8mm screw in there, screw that up, and repeat. Now the gearbox is all enclosed and sealed within its little box. We can now install this into the chassis. So the final part, 24, and the battery tray, I am just going to go ahead and get that put together and put under. I'm not going to include it in the video. Everything is pretty much the same as is, so just be wary of what you're using, but we are going to drop the gearbox into the chassis now. One chassis, we are going to need the prop shaft. That's just going to go into that diff cup on there. That into there. Cross the wires out the way just so they can sit there behind the servo, and it all just drops in there nicely. And take note of your mounting positions from the manual. That prop shaft in. There we go. Bolt that up. one Tamiya chassis. Quite a big lump, that gearbox. Still a rackety old truck, typical Tamiya truck, but it's nice. I like it. So there it is. It has been a pleasure to build. They always are, and they go together so smooth. So the next steps is a few little bits which I don't really need to do on camera, like building up the fifth wheel thing and the battery tray. So we're getting through this build. Later in the week I'll have some Volvo videos because I am getting my clear coats later, so I can get that finished off. It's been quite a fiddly build, that one, in all honesty, but I'm actually just looking forward to getting it out of the way now. And this Scania, I'm loving this. So I'll have to get the compressor out and the gun and stuff like that, and then I can start planning on getting this painted for her. So I'm going to wrap that up for that one. Do thank you all for watching again. It's most appreciated. Without yous, it'd be pointless me even doing this. So don't forget to leave a like on the video, drop a comment down below, and hit that subscribe button if you're not already subscribed. Hit that notification bell to keep notified, and if the video isn't of any interest to you, then ignore that notification and move on with your life. So ciao for now, guys.